Hi, my name's Rachel McLeod, and today we're going to be talking about taking things personally. And as a part of the concept of trauma and anxiety recovery and what these two things have to do with each other. Okay, so that's what we're going to explore today. I want to give you a very functional understanding of this so that you know why this is happening, you know what to do about it, and you know where you're at in the healing process. And this is measurable. This is, you can measure how you're doing in your healing process by this sign and what to do with it. Not to feel guilty about this at all, but to see these things as opportunities for healing and wellness because that's what they are. They're points along the healing journey, and it just means take a couple more steps. So, but we're going to talk about that. Um, so, I'm a mental health therapist and emotional wellness coach, and I specialize in helping people do the brain work for resolving symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. And the brain has a really beautiful process for this. That process gets stopped and blocked, and so the majority of my work is helping the brain get that process up and running again. And so that's what we're gonna talk about from that perspective, is helping the brain restore function and go through its processes well. And so a lot of that is determined by getting this process unblocked and moving forward. A lot of that has to do with working with the survival system part of the brain, which is not typically what we're working with in our talk therapies. We usually, in traditional therapy, we leave that part of the brain out. And I'm a huge proponent for bringing it in because that's the part that will determine whether the healing process can take place, whether the brain can move through its healing process, which is where you get your win, which is when the brain can resolve your symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress for you like it's designed to do. So we're helping to restore the optimal function, and which is so awesome and fabulous. And it's like having a best friend who's just going to do awesome things for you instead of having that friend that's distorted and disorganized and can't do what they're doing and they're doing terrible things for you, like panic attacks and all the things traumatized and anxious brains do. Okay, so that's where we're at. That's what we're going to talk about. I've got drawings for you today. so, let's start in here with taking things personally. This is one of the sounds that trauma makes. And so, if you are dealing with PTSD, complex PTSD, and usually anxiety is rooted in those two things, this is the sound you will be making because you will say this a lot, and you will do things that reveal that you're taking it personally. And so when we are taking things personally, we have beliefs, conscious or unconscious, that it's about us, that we were the problem, we did the wrong thing, we made the mistake, they're saying this because they don't like us. We have all these stories, right? And it's not accurate thinking because there's more involved with why something went wrong than just you. And if you played a role at all, then there would also be other roles to play as well. This is one of the reasons why people with complex PTSD, like developmental trauma, end up taking responsibility for everybody's stuff. And it's because they're actually taking it personally. Their brain can't do anything more. It can't move along the process any further than taking things personally. And that is because the healing process is blocked. We get that unblocked, and all of a sudden you're going to see new steps taking place. And I'm going to show you that. I'm going to demonstrate that because I want you to see the signs that let you know that you're healing from this. For instance, if we're little and our parent is screaming at us, we might internalize that and say, I'm bad. Right? So now we're learning I'm bad. No, actually, your parent is screaming because they're dysregulated, maybe because they're already overloaded and traumatized, or maybe they don't have the skill set for what you're experiencing or what you're doing or how they're interacting with you. That has nothing to do with you. Right? But if you can't get past the taking it personal phase, you won't get to the other logic and reasoning functions in your brain so that you can see this thing from other perspectives and you can see other nuances there. It's like a fixation, a tunnel vision on it's my fault. And so as we're healing this and we're resolving this, we're going to watch the brain expand into and understanding multiple aspects and nuances of the dynamic. And that's when you're going to see mastery really rise for us. We're not going to pick up other people's responsibilities. We're not going to make make assumptions that this is our fault and take it personally, or that they're doing this. We're not going to believe the stories that our brain is making, that this is happening because they don't like me, or this is happening because I don't, all the things that we will make up. Right, this is happening because I missed them when they raised their hand in class. Right, teachers are experiencing this, professionals are experiencing this. We're doing this in our relationships. This is brain function, and if this brain function is not any better than this, we will take it everywhere with us in our life, and it will show up. That's why when we get this resolved, every area of our life is elevated, because our brain is like, oh, I can look at all these other details too. I don't have to rely on this one assumption that I did something wrong. I can see that, oh, there's some responsibility they have. And we start to really be collaborative in these experiences, because it's not just our fault. We're just with shame, and we're doing more pain functions that create withdrawal and lower functioning. So this whole thing is a trauma response. It is when the brain's ability to process gets impaired, blocked, or stopped, and we can't do anything more with our brain. Now, this happens a lot, and this is nobody's fault, and time keeps moving. So even though your brain can't do anymore, you still have to go do all the things. And so you're going to have to do all the things doing the best you have, which is taking things personally. Right? You see, that is so frustrating, because you're like, it's just really frustrating to not have more brain function, because it's confusing, because some part of you knows, probably this is not all my fault. And you might even logically be arguing with yourself, but your body and your subconscious programming is still behaving like it's all your fault, or like you should take it personally. You should take all the responsibility for this. So the solution here is healthy brain function. This is not where you want to fight with your brain and say, but you know better. It doesn't. It actually hasn't been able to complete its process for figuring this out and knowing better. Your prefrontal cortex, your thinking center, is running around doing all the things. It knows, it's thought all the thoughts, it's seen all the things, but it can't integrate it, because the rest of you hasn't gone through the whole mind, body, brain process of understanding. So this is one of the reasons why talk therapy is not super fabulous. It's very, I'm being generous. It's not very effective for resolving symptoms of anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress, because it doesn't affect this at the level that it needs to be affected. And that process, natural healing process, is still blocked. And so that's why we want to unblock that. And we unblock that by sending messages of safety through the body up to that part of the brain. Okay, that's why the interventions that work well to resolve symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress look weird. But they help that one process get unblocked, and the whole thing works together, and we can resolve symptoms super, super fast. Okay, so let's take a look deeper into this. Now, what happens if your brain can only make this much, but life is still going and you have to go on with what you have? Not very good brain function, and taking things personally, is that you have impairments. We'll see impairments in your life. You're actually living with a limp. You're walking with a limp. And one of the limps that we will find is impaired conflict resolution. You actually do not have the ability to repair conflict, because you can't understand the situation from the bigger picture, from the nuances, the multiple perspectives, because your brain is actually stuck at the process of taking it personally. And so we're going to find that if your spouse says this to you and you take it personally, you're saying that because you just can never stop holding a grudge, right? Or you're saying that because you're just so mean. You're saying that because I failed you so many times, right? We're taking it personally. And then our spouse is like, I'm just trying to have a conversation with you. I'm just trying to work out this thing. And your ability to be in conflict resolution is you're collapsing, you're fighting, you're flighting, you're defending, you're in survival mode about it, instead of collaboration, creation. And so your ability to have high level resolution skills is blocked. And by the trauma. That's why traumatic events and relationship difficulties often go hand in hand because the brain isn't able to resolve the trauma, and it's also doing a bunch of wonky things that are going to impair your ability to resolve conflict. You can't even process the data, mental, emotional data, sensory data of the conflict to do anything healthy with that information. It's like somebody's dropping reports on your desk and you can't read them. And so but you still have to resolve the conflict because it's happening now. And you have no idea what's going on, right? And you might logically know what's going on, but your body, your brain, your subconscious mind have not gone through their process to figure out what's going on. So your prefrontal cortex is running all over the place, doing all over the things, and nobody else is. So you don't have enough internal harmony. You don't have enough brain function to show up and actually resolve conflict. And so you have a disordered way of being in conflict. And this impairs your relationships with your spouse, your children, your coworkers, people you meet. And this is resolved by trauma processing, emotion processing, distress processing, often rooted in trauma. Right? So that's one level of impairment that we're going to see. The second level of impairment we're going to see is problem solving. If you are taking things personally, your ability to resolve problems is limited. That is effective problem solving is a whole brain process. And so, but if the whole brain isn't working on something because the survival system shut it down, then all you're left with is taking things personally, and you cannot do effective problem solving. And I'm going to show you what's going to happen. You're going to have very distorted problem solving, and then that's going to create other impairments in your life. You're going to have a new limp, another limp. The more limping you're doing in your life, the more problematic this is, right? You want to be running and flying and soaring, but you're limping around. And it's not just you, it's all of us that are experiencing, that are recovering from trauma. And so what you're going to have is impaired work or unfinished work projects. This is stuff that's going to show up at work. This is going to be your home. Maybe you can't do the dishes. You can't finish the dishes. Maybe you can't finish your laundry. Maybe you can't finish getting your car repaired, right? Maybe you can't finish reports. You're going to notice more procrastination, where procrastination is that your brain is afraid of the task, and or it can't create solutions to create the next steps for you. So it can't see the next steps. Everybody else could see the next steps. You can't see the next steps. And so either one of those reasons will create procrastination around tasks. And if you don't complete tasks, then things start to fall apart. And so you've got disorder and chaos, right? These things aren't just showing up in our life for no reason, and they are rooted in incomplete brain function processes that we want to get up and running again. And this is also will create low quality work where maybe your brain can do it, but it can't really get in there and work the dough, or, it's like, oh, I can see all these components and I'm going to work the dough and I'm going to make this awesome bread. No, it's like, I'm going to get the ingredients together, but I can't really work it too much. So it's kind of flour and dough, but we are going to get some bread out of this at the end. It's just going to be nothing you've seen before. It's going to be really wonky. Right? And we want your brain to be working at its full capacity and at optimal speed and optimal function. We want all the brain working together. And we're going to help with that. Okay, let me show you. And brains naturally make this. If the processor is processing, this naturally happens. I recently got some feedback on a YouTube video that they're like, just show us the interventions, okay? Or just show us how to do the work. Don't just talk about the work. Okay, I cannot do that, because if your brain has to make these things. Your brain has to go through its process of making these things. Now, I do have a free program where I walk people through the interventions where these interventions will help your brain move through these processes, right? And there are more skills that you can learn. I have another program where I walk you through my roadmap for, okay, first you do this exercise, then you do this one, then you target that symptom, and then you target that issue, then you target this project, right? And you get your brain doing all the things, right? And you get your brain to resolve your disorders and limitations that are caused by impaired processing. right? But I can, right? This video is really just to show you, hey, as you're processing, you're going to see these markers. This is how this changes. This is to inspire you to get in there and let your brain cook. Support your brain to do the work. Brains cannot do this without specific support. And if you've already got symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress showing up, or conflict that you can't resolve, or problems you can't solve, then your brain actually doesn't have the support it needs to do this. And you can use these interventions to provide that support very targetedly, very specifically, very directly. Okay, so brains naturally make this. We can guide your brain to make this, but we are waiting for your brain to make this, and it doesn't take long. It takes about. Let me show you. Okay, we've got this. I don't know if you can read that. I'm going to walk you through it with me. You can come back and freeze here. Is it in the frame? Okay. Well, let me show you what it says here. Okay, this is how it goes when something occurs. So let's take an old trauma because it'll be easy to follow that way, but this is happening all the time. You take an old trauma right here with and the first thing that's going to happen is emotions. And that is letting your brain know we're in danger, and it's going to shift you over to fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fawn, right? And so that's occurring. You're going to have your emotional responses and then judgments, and then you're going to have your stories about it, and then you're going to have objectivity if you get processing, right? So I'm going to stop right there. If these emotions get processed, something awesome is going to happen here. If these stories don't get processed, you're going to have unresolved, unprocessed fear, terror, distress, disgust, horror, shame, all these things running through your system. These are extremely painful in the brain. They fire off the pain neurons into the stratosphere, and you're going to get fight, flight, freeze, faint, or fawn. That's going to make it so that your brain function is going to be mostly survival system and less whole brain state. The survival system, when activated, it starts shutting down the brain. And it starts shutting down the other parts of the brain and moves the energy, electricity, and chemicals into the survival system. So under fMRI, you're going to see things start to shut down and light up in the survival system. The whole brain is going to, the language parts of the brain start reducing in function. The problem-solving parts start reducing. And so your moral part of the brain starts reducing. And so we don't have access to those parts of the brain. And so the emotions are going to be running. Then we're going to have emotional reasoning. We're going to try to do all the logic and reasoning, but it's going to be impaired. It's going to be distorted by emotion. Okay, this is just how it works. Then we're going to make judgments. These are going to be emotionally rich judgments. They're going to be, as it feels this way, it must be this way. These are going to be distorted. It's going to be overgeneralizations. It's going to be, we're going to start future telling. We're going to start reading into, this is where the cognitive distortions, there's 15, come in. That's a great read. There's posters. You can get a PDF online. Just Google it. And this is happening right here. And then once you've got these guys running, now your brain's going to make stories. Brains do this. Brains are meaning-making machines. They're going to weave it together and make you a story. This is always happening. If you've got great mastery of your brain function, you're going to be able to assess your stories. Those of us who don't are going to just have stories, and we're going to believe them. Our brain's going to story us, and we're going to be like, oh, I know he did. And oh, yes, she did. We're not going to be like, oh, I wonder if that's true. Let me figure out if that's true. Let me go have a conversation and see if that's true. We're already off to the races. And so, and then we're going to, with the stories, we're going to be acting those out. We're going to be replaying scenarios that are invented by our brain entirely, that do not have a hold in reality. We're not bringing in enough perspectives to really see things from a reality place. And then we're off and running, and we're creating our life with these stories. That's why we're talking about if we can if we can process more emotions, we actually will create, we will be able to create higher function in our life. So, but what happens here, and you know that it's so hard to have a conversation with somebody who's taking things personally and who won't see things from your perspective and who looks and feels entirely illogical, right? This is happening. This impaired processing is what is at the root of that. So what happens if we have a traumatic event, or we have any event now? Let's say we get written up at work, right? We're going to have emotions about that. If we can process this, I think I want to say something else. Okay, let me say this. This is a subconscious programming, because you've been trying it thousands of times and your brain is like, let's just make this faster and I'll just run this on the subconscious programming, which means it will be effortless, it'll be fast, and you won't even be conscious it's running. When we want to repair this, we actually pull this up to the conscious level and we slow it down a lot. And we walk the brain through the process. We look around at this and we're like, look at what you're doing, brain. And the brain is like, it clutches its pearls like that. No. And we're like, yeah, no, you've been doing this. And then it will go in and make repairs, right? And that's what we want to walk it through that process. So, okay. So we're going to slow this down and we're going to look at the emotions and we're going to support those to get processed. This is what the interventions I offer in my free program are about. We're working this. We're going slow here. The more we get this stuff processed, the less emotional reasoning takes place. We will actually still do this, but it will be faster and you won't notice it and won't catch you so much, because the emotion's actually getting utilized well by the brain and being converted into higher higher emotion states like courage. Come on, brain. Shift over here. Courage, hope, insight, new insights, epiphanies, kindness, assertiveness, healthy boundaries. There, it goes off. It really will take these negative emotions and use them for wellness creation. And so what's good is that people that have a lot of dysfunction and a lot of unresolved emotions are right at the point where they are about to have a ton of growth. That's why when we talk about post-traumatic growth, this is what we're talking about. That the brain is actually finally utilizing all that raw material in a healthy way, not in a way that's going to pain us and reduce our function and make us not be able to resolve conflict and stuck in situations and dynamics. There's a ton of growth when we start repairing and working and focusing on supporting this process, this brain function. And so there's going to be less emotional reasoning, and the judgments are never going to stop judging. I have a video called How to Be Judgmental Well. It's a thing. You got to do it, because we don't stop judgments. We actually need to be great judges, masterful judges, and which means we have a lot of skill of what we do with our own judgments. Anyway, another video, another time. Our brain is going to make stories that are just going to run, and it will start stories here. It will start stories as soon as it's going to start stories. Once you move into objectivity, you have mostly utilized all the emotional energy, and it's already getting converted and is turned into data, and they're reviewing and analyzing things for you up here in the whole brain state. And then there's going to be a lot of objectivity. And so instead of taking things personally, what you're going to do is you're going to notice other details. You're going to say, well, there were other people here, and it's possible that there were many reasons why this took place like that. I bet there could be a percentage of stuff that was my fault, and I bet that there was, and even if we're looking at my fault, maybe there's just stuff to learn here or opportunity. It's very objective. It's not emotionally driven. You'll notice that as you do this work, there will be a different feel to the context, to the words that you're saying. One, you can, like brains, you can do this with questions people are asking. Why did they always do that to me? It's full of emotion, right? And the other one, objectivity, is why did they do this to me? One's curious, that's an objective brain state, and the other one is looking for objectivity, and the other one is looking for emotion moving. And both reasons are really good to ask the question. You just need to know where you're at. If you're still in emotion, you're over here. We want to move this over here. Once we get to objectivity, then the mental doors for exploring other perspectives show up. Now we want to say, hey, my brain's telling me this story, but I wanted to check that with you to see if I was right. Is this your perspective as well? And now we're going back and forth. We're not triggered about their perspective, or if we are, we're back over here. We got to work this process for a little while. And, and then we can be over here objective again. And then we got to circle back because they said something that triggered us, because we're still in the healing process, right? But we want to hang out here and then, and get over here. And then once we've got multiple perspectives, effective, rich, nuanced solutions start to show up. This is the stuff you want to create your life with. These are the actions you want to take. You want to take action here. It's going to be inspired by healthy brain function because your brain was able to walk through its entire process and it gave you an awesome product, which is is the solutions that it's generating now. Okay, so this was a long one about taking things personally, but I want you to see that it's not bad, it's just where you're at now and there's more. You want to call your brain and support your brain to do more. Okay, so I invite you to try those three interventions. Dana says, "Is this real?" It feels real. Thank you. This is real. And if you're taking things personally, it's really not your fault. It's brain function. And so you really can work there and get that open. And you are going to be somebody that people are going to be like, you're going to say, oh my gosh, I used to take everything personally. And they're going to be like, you? And you're going to be like, ah, look at my brain. You know, that's what we're going for here. And because it is about resolving symptoms, but it's really about creating the healthy brain function to create the life of your dreams, a desire-based living, where you're proud of who you are, you're authentic, and you're becoming more and more of yourself because your brain works. Okay, and trauma impairs these processes. Okay, that's all I got to say. I will see you all later. Take care. Oh, and the links to the programs are in the description part of this video. Take care. Bye.